So if you're only working in your field and in isolation, it's great you have an expertise, but to really contribute, somebody needs to tap you on the shoulder. And
how can a set of skills lead you down the path to success? That's what we're setting out to answer on the EdUp Canada podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sangster. Join me as we unpack how leaders around the world have taken training and skills and turned that into a lasting career. Now let's learn together. Welcome back to the EdUp Canada podcast. I'm Michael Sangster, your host, and I am joined today by one of my favorite people in Ottawa. I can see her, you can't. I'm going to make her blush. We were just chatting for a few minutes before we went on the air. Marie Lemay, CEO of the Royal Canadian Mint, literally one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in Ottawa. So I asked her to join us today because we wanted to talk about a couple of things around leadership and skills development. We often think that a leader's role is only to drive organizational performance at the expense of all else. In recent years, we've learned that this is simply not the case. For Marie Lemay, our guest today on the EdUp Canada podcast, she knows that driving organizational performance doesn't need to come at the expense of social good or her people and their well-being. In fact, I know Marie well enough to know that she thinks they're linked and mutually reinforcing. So with that, Marie, welcome.
well, hello, Michael. It's official. I am now blushing. So thank you for that.
It's always good to have a little blush in the morning, right?
Well, thank you for having me on your show. Really appreciate that.
I'm looking forward to it. I meant what I said. So we always make people introduce themselves in a minute or so. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your own career and what you're doing now. It's the CEO of the Royal Canadian Mint, but in this day and age, there might be another title in there too, right? Is it just CEO or is it President CEO?
It's President CEO. And for the numismatics or the collectors of the world, I'm the Master of the Mint. So
the Master of the Mint.
Yes.
That's a serious group of people.
It is.
You've had an interesting career path, though.
I think I've been privileged, Michael. I've had such a wonderful career. I studied engineering at a very young age and worked with municipal government for about 15 years. I got to lead to be the director of technical services in a wonderful municipality in Chelsea and be the director general of that municipality and then move on to a nonprofit organization representing engineers across the country and internationally for a number of years, to then move on to the National Capital Commission, where I was the CEO for 5 years at a really interesting time, at the time where we opened the meetings to the public. It was really making the NCC transparent and accountable. So it was a wonderful time. And to then go into government in the core federal family. So I went to Infrastructure Canada. I went to economic development for the Quebec regions, to come back to public service procurement. And now I am at the Mint. So very fascinating, interesting careers. I have loved every minute in every job. So I feel blessed.
I remember the first time we met. We were both on bikes, riding up to a station next to the War Memorial, announcing a new TELUS-sponsored bike rental service that the NCC was involved with. And the first time we met, we both had to put on helmets and ruin our beautifully coiffed hair.
Yeah.
And ride across the city and show up at a press conference.
Interesting you mentioned that, because those were the days, at the NCC, you represent the region. So both sides, right? The National Capital Region, the Gatineau side, the Ottawa side. And I often found that, the river really separated us instead of uniting us. And the bike share, so the Bixie at the time, was really a very unique opportunity to collaborate and to get both sides working together, because we were going on both sides of the river, and we had Ottawa and we had Gatineau working together with the NCC. It was just wonderful.
Wow. And you were focused on space making and creating places for people to go and things for people to do in the national capital. And I'm glad to see you use the word transparent, because I remember when you opened the board meetings, that was a big change. And it was a welcome and needed change.
But not easy. But the employees embraced it, the board embraced it, and I think the community really appreciated it.
So we talk to people who run career colleges on this podcast. We talk to students, we talk to instructors, and we talk to employers. Talk to me about a little of a fun question here. You're promoting someone at the Mint, and they're internal, they're not applying for a job, you're promoting them. What is the skill that you often see that made them jump out to you and made them successful, that you said, this is a leader I want to work with?
I would have to say the ability to build a team. To me, the ability to surround yourselves with the right people, to really build that diverse team with people that complement each other so you can have the right discussions and the honest conversations to get to the best decision. I think that is a skill that really makes a leader successful. But I would add another one. I'll call it curiosity or eagerness to learn, but the openness to learn. So people that are not afraid to learn about new emerging areas and not afraid to learn from others. I think those are skills that really make people successful.
We're all framed from the lessons we learn. And I learned a lot at an organization I worked at, TELUS. And we had a couple that touch on that and of our mantras that we used to use. And one was that we embrace change and we initiate opportunity. I think that's what you're talking about. Be open, challenge yourself to look at new ideas and come forward, and can never really go wrong. So those are the kind of people you look for. How do you build that in an organization? Is there easy things that you can do?
Well, I think you can model it for sure. One of the approaches I've taken throughout my career is, even with my executive team, to make sure that I try to build a team that complements each other and create a space where you can have the discussions. And, I learned very early on that people that work for you in the organization really look at how they behave. And they learn from that and they take from that. So I think it is extremely important that the leadership does model that behavior for the whole organization to take it on.
Do as I say, not as I do. The old, right? And we all have seen the reverse, right? And that's going to be a bigger leadership lesson, the bad things you do sometimes than the good things.
And when you build a team, what I'm looking for, I want people that are okay with having people that think differently than them around a table, that will bring different perspectives, that maybe can be smarter than them. Like, you're not one person. It's always about the team. So people that can build those teams and lead them are the ones that are successful, in my opinion.
It's funny, you touched on a point there. We have a podcast coming up soon with 3 people who worked for me. And it's going to be funny. I know the 3 people, but all 3 of them are smarter and more accomplished than me. One left me at TELUS to become the MNA for Aylmer, Quebec, and became a minister in the Quebec government, Liberal government.
Oh.
Another one, Andre Fortin. Morgan Hayduke went on and is running a company called Beatstep, and is one of the neatest, most innovative music companies in the world. And the third one that's joining us is Andrea McGuigan, who went on and is continuing to work for Stephen Harper, the former prime minister. And they're all smarter, more accomplished, and we all learn from each other every day. Let's go a little different direction here for a moment. I know you from the philanthropic community in Ottawa, not just from going to galas, although I have to say, I'm not disappointed that I don't think I've been to a gala since COVID. And I don't miss having to put on a tuxedo on a Saturday night as much as I used to. I'd rather sit on the couch and watch a hockey game or a football game. Talk to me. How do you find time? Are you still able with this job to give back?
Well, Michael, it's interesting because I often feel that I'm not giving back enough. But if I look back, I've always, in some ways, been involved with or on the board of not-for-profits. So, whether it was as a student, when I was a student, I was the president of my engineering association. When my kids were growing up, I was on the daycare board. We did some stuff for the food bank. I was on the board of governors of Ottawa University. And now I'm chairing a board of International Mint Directors Association. So for me, it's been my way of contributing, is using the skills that I've acquired, my experience, and, make it profitable for other groups, if you want. But I think it's amazing what I have received from those experiences and how much I've learned. And I think that's probably why I feel like I'm not giving. It's because I'm getting as much, if not more, than I'm giving. So it's an interesting feeling that I think there's no one way of giving. So that's been my approach. Do I feel like I give enough? No, I would like to continue, give more. But I think you do it, like I said, when you can, how you can. And that hasn't been my way. So
I think it's fair to say we've both worked hard, but we've both been very, very lucky in life and have had good paths that have taken us on great adventures. And I feel it's a responsibility.
I
And
agree.
I know you feel the
I
same.
agree.
It's something we should. And while you're giving back on that committee, feeling you're not getting, there's someone across the table that's probably getting more from you
Yeah.
than you realize too in the moment, but you don't see it in the moment. My favorite was I finished up my time with the Ottawa Food Bank Board, and I recruited in a new board director, and they were looking for some accounting experience. So I went and found one. And it's a funny little story, but when we recruited this individual, we absolutely panicked the head of accounting for the food bank. We recruited Sheila Fraser, the Auditor General of Canada, to join the board of directors. And she panicked. And I went, no, Sheila's not, she's just going to bring you the resources you need to get better. And the individual called me later and said, thank you. I am way better at what I do now. And this lady was lovely, and she just gave, and she brought me young students, and we just did a better, and it was incredible. But you can imagine she was sitting at her desk going, wait a second, why is the Auditor General coming in here now?
Yeah, but that's a big difference between being in the management of the organization and being on the board, right? So that's that complementarity that's really, really important.
So knowing what you know now in your career path, what's a hard skill and a soft skill that you wish that you learned earlier that might have led to even more success, or maybe it was something you inherently had early in your career and it has led to your success?
Well, I'll start with the soft one because that's the easiest one for me. It's listening. I am an extrovert.
Sorry, what was that? I didn't hear that.
I am an extrovert, in case you didn't know. And it took me a little while to own that skill. And I'm still working on it, I think, sometimes. But I think it is so important. And I don't think you can learn it early enough. So I wish I would have spent a little bit more time on that in my early years. For the hard skill, I think it is actually being fluent in more languages. I do speak French and English, and there was a time when I was in my teenage years where I was almost fluent in Spanish. I've lost some of that. It's just that speaking somebody else's language is really a wonderful way to break down barriers, and it really does open you up to an entire new world. And I find today, especially when I'm working with my colleagues internationally, I wish I could speak all these languages. And I think if I could go back, I would probably try to pick up one or two more. So,
wow, that's an interesting one. It's something that I've always struggled with. I've never been able to inhale new languages, and French killed me in school, just absolutely destroyed me. And I keep saying I'm going to go back and learn it, and I should, and I probably will. I think it's something. I'm getting a little older. You'll chuckle. Yesterday at Perkins, I had my first seniors discount breakfast at 55. I realized there's a whole other page to the menu now, and I'd like to learn French, and I think I got to go do that.
Yeah, and I, because you're asking if I could go back in time, it's a lot easier when you're younger. So that's why I realized today I probably wouldn't be able to pick those up the same way. But when you're younger, just something I wish I'd done. So.
I may not have been the best student. There's a possibility I was a bit of a class clown. Extrovert, as my mother would say, is a bit of an under definition of me. So let's go back to a little bit about your day-to-day job. You're running the Mint, Crown Corporation, correct, right?
Yes, commercial Crown, yes.
What are some of the skills we talked about when you promote someone, but for our members, these career colleges that are out training people for, often they're in their 30s, a second chance, some of them it's a first career, often it's the first time they graduated from anything for our students. What's a skill that our sector should be maybe more focused on training for, either skills or for career paths? And I'll give you a little hint there. Like, we're spending a lot of time now doing a lot more training on cybersecurity and IT skills, where someone can come in for a year and upgrade, and maybe come in for 4 months, take a course, then go away and work, because these individuals need that flexibility to go make some money and then come back. So a soft skill or a skill or career path that you're looking for, you're hiring for at the Mint.
So I think those area of cyber, AI will all obviously be very important. But I would say, to me, it's almost like a complete problem solving. Like the issues today are so complex. They are multidisciplinary. How do you tackle them without not looking at things in silo? More of that strategic thinking, more of that long term. Things come in bite sizes and very short term these days. Getting the students to really think about I'll say the life cycle of a decision, if you want. The ability to also be able to differentiate between the noise and what's urgent, what's important, what's beyond that noise. So all the different specific skills in isolations are important, and obviously the critical ones that you mentioned. But I think being able to have that multidisciplinary view and be able to reach out to others, other that have expertise, will be what people will need to be able to tackle these really complex problems. So if you're only working in your field and in isolation, it's great you have an expertise, but to really contribute, somebody needs to tap you on the shoulder and bring you into a larger team that will be looking at things differently. So to be able to do that, to reach out for that, these are things that I think will be really, really important.
There's a little pearl of wisdom in there for anybody who caught that. I think about either developing or making sure as a leader, you're reaching out to people and making them a part of what's going on so they can develop their own skills.
Absolutely.
We interviewed someone last week about resume development, a lovely woman out of Calgary, Sheila Musgrove. And she got talking about her resumes and stopped putting the stuff from 15 years ago because that's not the job you want. So when you're in your role, think about where you want to go and put your hand up and say, can I help? Can I get involved? And be, as a leader, be open to it too.
And the beauty about college is that you're thinking practically of a lot of things, right? So there can be a lot, you can have situations, I think you can get the students together, bringing different departments together and just helping them understand that they can't tackle the problem alone. They will need other people and they will need other skills.
I believe we're much better at that. And almost every one of our programs involves a work placement.
Yeah.
So you got some work integrated learning. So you learn when you're training, and that also helps you develop the skill sets.
Michael, I would say even workplaces are not sometimes perfect at this, right? It sometimes takes more investment at the beginning to bring different points of view, different expertise together, to look at the problem, it's in holisticness, if you want, and then solve it. People tend to think that that front end, that investment is sometimes a waste of time. I can just go in and solve the issue. But I firmly believe that the time that you invest at the beginning to making sure that you have all the perspective, that you understand the problem, in its entirety, will save you time down the road.
So I think there's a lesson here on my next question that comes right out of what you're talking about with problem solving. And I'm going to challenge people to think of this if they're a student, your answer, or I'm going to let you go for a minute on what you guys did at the Mint. But we're all involved in strategic planning. We're all developing business goals. Some people are sitting home trying to figure out the next career path. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you went through at your board? Because I've read about it. You talked about the very important question, is there value here? Where are we going and what are we doing? And I know you channeled your whole organization into looking at it, didn't you? Give us a couple of minutes on what that was like and why it was important to do it in a really honest way with each other. Because you've been open about this, haven't you?
Okay. Yes. So I need to give a little bit of context for your listeners here, because when I joined the Mint, there was a topic that wasn't talked about a lot. And that was, with the increase in use of digital payment, would we still need coins? And would you stop managing and producing coins? Now, I remember there's a saying, be careful what you ask for. So when you ask questions, you've got to be able to live with the answer. And in our case, asking the question and having the meaningful conversation really led us to the conclusion that for the foreseeable future, coin, cash, and digital payment will need to coexist. And from a social inclusion perspective, it is crucial, and for many other reasons. And Canadians in our surveys are telling us that even if they use more digital payment, they want to retain the option of paying with cash. Now, we could do an entire other podcast on this, Michael. It's a fascinating topic, but I'll get back to your question because this is a small example of what I think it comes down to is courage. Courage in asking the tough and the real questions and having the honest conversations. Because once you're able to do that, then it's easy to communicate. It's easy to deliver. Your path is clear. It makes a world of difference. And I know it's difficult to teach. Courage in decision-making, courage in leading is not an easy thing to teach. Maybe it's more along the critical thinking. But I think especially in today's environment, we have to have those conversations and we have to be ready to accept if the result is not what you like or But what's the point of continuing if you're pretending you're leading a whole organization in a direction that is futile? So having those conversations with the board was extremely important. It really crystallized and made very clear for us that we're bringing a lot of value and where we bring value and where we needed to focus. So again, I could fill a full podcast on cash, coins, and the future, and digital payments, and the importance of cash in society, but we'll leave it at that.
I will not walk us into conversations around Bitcoins and currency and government policies, because that's just a quagmire for you. And I think we should stay clear of that. But I think there were some pearls in there, as I thought there would be. And I'm going to jump on one about courage. And that, to me, is the most important thing a leader of any organization does, is creating a climate where people can be courageous, where they can put their hand up. And there's nothing worse than a culture when people can't put their hand up. And you have to do it in a respectful way, and you have to treat your coworkers in a good way, but we should always be challenging each other. And I was fortunate to be in a group of companies early in my career, and that was the approach. And it was a Monday morning meeting where we went after each other's business plans as a team. And it was borderline vicious for new people who didn't understand that there was nothing mean about it. It was getting to best in class.
People that have worked with me would have heard me say this several times. There is nothing that I dislike most is being in a meeting and there's no questions and people are nodding, and it's a meeting where I end up talking to people and there's smiles and they walk out, then I don't know what's being said in the corridor. I want the conversation to happen around the table, and I work really hard at creating that environment. Not always been successful, but I'd say most of the time, creating that environment where we can have these conversations. It's interesting because just recently I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues on our leadership team, and he was sharing with me that he has not lived that all in every organization that he's been in. And he really appreciates the fact that he's actually able to challenge me, challenge his colleagues, and we do it in a very respectful way, but we always end up with the best decision doing it that way. So I think it's absolutely crucial. You're correct.
I can't help coming back to our sector, because our career colleges, the classrooms are smaller, 10, 12, 15 people. And they get that intimate relationship going with all their students, and they all sit around and have coffee, and I've seen it, and they challenge them and they push them hard. And then when you integrate that into some workforce learning, if they've done a placement of some kind, we end up with some pretty desirable graduates. We're doing some work right now with the Department of Veterans Affairs around helping veterans retrain to get back to work. And I tell you what, the employers are calling me because they want to hire those kinds of people who have discipline, focus, hard work ethics, but also are not unafraid to put their hand up and go, why? Why this way? And I've talked to a few of them. It's interesting. Once they come out of the chain of command of the military, which has been trained in this way,
yeah,
they're quite happy to challenge someone a little bit once in a while. They enjoy it.
And obviously, needless to say, but all this can be done it has to be done in a super respectful way, right? That's the way to do this.
It's always the challenge. So, but I forgot, by the way, I believe I'm supposed to be calling you Dr. Lemay, because you have an honorary doctorate. Do you wear that around the house? Do you insist on them calling you Dr. Lemay now?
No, I will tell you what, though, very, very touched, humbled. I didn't expect this. This was quite a surprise.
Huge honor.
Yes. And,
honor.
It was interesting because I was speaking to the engineering graduates, and I was very young when I got my degree. I was 20 years old. And when I got my degree, there is no way that I even thought for a second that I would be up there on the stage one day talking to graduates. So for me, the first lesson in that was, everything's possible. Even if you don't see it, it can absolutely happen. But I did take the opportunity when I was speaking to the graduates, Michael, to tell them about how important, again, that multidisciplinary approach. And I was asking them not to limit themselves to technical issues, and not to be afraid to embrace the social issues and to tackle the complex ones, because again, it goes back to that multidisciplinary view. And I did say that, and I firmly believe this, that diversity of views, background, culture, experience, and yes, education will be key in addressing some of these big issues that we're facing and that the future will bring. I advised them to follow their head and their heart and their gut, but I told them to lead with passion and compassion trust their instinct and be courageous. So see some of those themes come back, right? That's, yeah.
It's all coming back. It's interesting if you get a chance to listen to our podcast with Mike Moffat. He talked about, he's a big housing advocate, but he's really about community building and space building and all the policies that go around some of the challenges we're facing right now. And we were sharing a bit of a chuckle in that we need to train more people to build homes, but there aren't enough homes for the workers we need to build. So we're in this bit of a quagmire right now, but we'll get through it because we do need to do it. And it's fun to watch all the governments kind of coming together and finding a path, but they're all trying to be courageous in their own ways and change policies and get around communities' views on housing. This is an interesting the debate that's been going on. So I'm going to finish on an interesting one here because we say it's our strong finish, but one of the lessons from my career for sure is mentors. The mentors I've had who've taught me along the way, and sometimes they knew they were, sometimes they didn't, and sometimes they were good mentors and sometimes they were bad mentors. Is one of the topics I've been focused on lately. Is people, we focus on the good mentors, but we all have bad ones, and we don't have to call them out today. But our worst day at work, we're a bad mentor to someone, and we don't even realize we're doing it in the moment. So talk to me about a great mentor or two you've had, and I'll warn you, tomorrow you're going to wake up and think of two more. It's happened to every guest so far, and they send me a note going, I forgot about Jimmy, because we've all had these great experiences in life. So tell me about a great mentor in your life that's changed your path.
Well, I mean, the first person that comes to my mind, obviously, is my father, because my mom and my dad raised me to really believe in myself and think that sky was the limit. And I was, again, very young in engineering, not a lot of women. And for me, that was okay. I knew I could do it. I didn't even ask myself if that was possible. I was just doing it. But outside of family, there is one woman that I worked with, and I think she believed in me more than I believed in myself. I had the privilege of working with Judy Grant, who was the mayor of Chelsea for several years. I don't know if you ever met Judy, but I joined the municipality. I was a director of technical services. I was responsible for public works and planning. I was 33 years old, and then I became the director general. But she was a caring leader, but she was a no-nonsense person. Like, anybody who met Judy knows exactly what I'm talking about here. But for me, she was a true ally. She never asked, and she always, at every opportunity, she promoted me. She was my biggest cheerleader. She had a big impact on my career. I mean, I can only thank her for caring so much, because it's mentors, but it's allies also. That's why I'm bringing that in. I think the people that support you through your career really make a big difference.
Now, do you think she knows that she was a mentor? Did you tell her?
I don't know. Well, you know what? I will.
She can listen.
Yes, I will tell her to listen till the end.
We've had a few of those moments, interestingly, where Goldie Hyder, who I know you know from Ottawa, connected to someone that he worked with, and his daughter was a friend of mine. And we went out for lunch, and we're working on a project now based on that moment in the little podcast here. So we're having fun. So we'll leave it there. You'll send me the email tomorrow with the other one you forgot, because we all have one. I'm going to finish with this, and I made you blush at the start, but I know that I have friends that you've mentored, that you've had an impact on, and you've had an impact, no doubt, within the Mint and in the government and in other places you've been in your career. So my honor to have you here today, Marie. We're due for another lunch. Now maybe we'll open a bottle of wine. Now that I know that you're a doctor, we can maybe do a little bit of psychotherapy or something. I think we've done that over wine before, haven't we?
Remember, it's an honorary doctor.
Honorary doctor. Always good to be around you, and I really appreciate you sharing some thoughts and ideas with people, because there's a lot of wisdom in what you gave us in the last half hour, and it's good to see you again, Marie.
Thank you very much, Michael. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you again on the next edition of the EdUp Canada podcast. Thanks for listening to another episode of the EdUp Canada podcast. We release new episodes regularly, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when they are officially out. If you love this episode, please leave a 4 or 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts, so that others can also discover how a set of skills can lead to success. Thanks for learning with us.